Good day, everybody, and welcome to On The Brink, episode 17, presented by Auditchain. Today, with the specter of the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee conducting a hearing about crypto looming over us, we present to you our 17th episode of our podcast. Today, some good topics that we're going to discuss: the SEC versus Kraken and shutting down their staking platform, the SEC versus Paxos and BUSD, and in a little bit of good news, the UAE, via their new Dubai Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority, issues new, clear, and concise regulation for governing crypto and virtual assets in the Emirate. This is all good news for us. So my name is Tom, otherwise known as Striking, here in the digital media world, and I'd like to introduce to you the Chief Marketing Officer of Auditchain, Yoli Chisholm. Yoli?
Thank you, Tom. So Jason, let's dive right in. What are your thoughts on what's happening with Kraken and staking?
The SEC is cracking down. That's what's happening. Staking is an investment contract. It does not matter what anyone says. You're putting up money, you're expecting a return, and you're depending upon Kraken in this case, or Lido, or someone else, the common enterprise, right? There's no way around it except a bigger standing army. I've said this a million times.
So what do you like? What is going to be the impact on the industry?
Well, I wrote an article, I think back in September, that stated that the merge was a quantitative regulatory compliance event, right? Designed, maybe not directly designed, but it's going to, the byproduct is that it's going to move staking services into the hands of rich banks and institutions who are already gatekeepers of the SEC, right? Who can afford the 32 ETH or the thousands of ETH, depending upon, how many nodes they want to run. So, people have to accept the fact that the SEC is regulated by banks, not the other way around. Okay? There are long, rich histories of banks grooming people, sending them to governments. They work for governments. They come back to the banks. They groom the next generation. It's a revolving door. It's not funny. It's just the way of the world.
Do we have a sense of how much of the crypto exchange business is staking? Like, how much of an impact is this?
I'm not sure how much of it is led by exchanges, but first of all, the exchanges themselves are next, right? Sooner or later, you're going to start to see crypto exchanges either being bought by banks because they failed to gain approval to register as an exchange under the 34 Act, or they failed to obtain approval by FINRA to register as an ATS exempt from the 34 Act, right?
Yeah.
Banks get it all in the end. Sorry, banks get it all in the end. You can piss and moan and you can cry and weep, but at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen.
The banks are going to get it. I did notice that the SEC, one of the SEC commissioners, spoke recently, and she spoke about how people were not getting approved. Her exact words were, "No crypto project is making it through the pipeline whatsoever," and so the SEC isn't letting any crypto project through, and they're taking forever to enforce or bring enforcement action against existing projects. Why, Jason?
Well, those are two separate and distinct questions.
Well, I think the best thing to ask is, why does the SEC let these projects go so long and have so much investor money put into it before they put the hammer down?
Because a regulatory agency is a business like any other. The difference is that any gap or shortfall in their budgets, they have to go and testify before appropriations and plead and beg for money, right? The reason that they let these projects last so long is so that they can make as much money as they can so the SEC can come in and take it. Right?
Does the SEC understand that when they bring enforcement action, they always say we're here. We have 330 million clients. The American people are our clients that we're protecting. Yet when they let these projects go on for a long time and then they come out and enforce them, they end up actually hurting a lot of the retail people in
They don't
the
care
short term.
about retail people. They
That's a good
don't
point.
care about you. They care about two
They
things.
say it on their marketing efforts, but in reality, they don't.
They
Yeah.
care about their budgets, and they care about not looking bad on TV. And guess what? The only people that the SEC looks bad to right now are the very people that the SEC believes is disturbing the peace, disrupting the natural order of things.
Right.
Right?
All right, so I guess I'll ask my other question. The SEC says as part of the registration process, you have to demonstrate, proper accounting and financial controls. Is that the reason why generally crypto projects don't get through the registration pipeline, because they just don't have a history of doing things according to the SEC guidelines for registration?
Yes.
They just don't know what they're doing?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons. But yes.
So, have they given guidance on what these organizations, like for example, DeFi project Lido, which is the largest staking service for Ether, like what are they going to need to change in order to be in compliance?
So in 1934, Franklin Delano Roosevelt called upon Joseph Kennedy, the greatest rug of all time, to reform the securities markets. We have time-tested public policy, well-established regulations written very clearly in a book and on a website, and under well-settled law. Now, in all fairness to the SEC, they cannot create new legislation that goes against legal precedent, right? They have a problem as much as these, people and these projects in crypto have a problem believing the SEC is not doing the right thing. They are doing something they are legally obligated and cannot possibly do otherwise. You cannot cross WP Howie. You cannot cross the Howie, that case. SEC,
Right, the Howie test.
WP Howie. And everybody says, what does oranges have to do with crypto? Nothing. It has to do with an investment contract.
But Jason, can we really say like a whole industry?
Go ahead.
He's going, Yoli. Hit him up.
Can we really say like a whole industry has just completely ignored the Howie test out of like defiance or ignorance? Because the technology, I think what folks in the industry feel is like the technology has outgrown the law, and crypto is not the only industry where that has happened, where there has had to be sort of a re-examination of the old laws. Why isn't this the case in the case of crypto?
I agree that a re-examination will occur.
Okay.
Right? I don't believe that re-examination will occur for as long as banks and incumbent SEC gatekeepers do not control the majority of crypto.
Right.
We're talking about programmable money, programmable value.
So do you think that it's a matter of sort of a delay tactic, like because we know that the banks are in crypto, are developing technology? Is it that they're not ready yet? Like when are we going to kind of do this switch over?
Yeah, those who think banks are not ready need their head examined. Okay, we're talking about the nature of money. That's what banks are all about.
Right.
Right? They don't want the public knowing what they have baking in their skunkworks projects in their basements. JP Morgan has been probably, and B of A too. B of A has more patents. I think they're number 2 in blockchain patents. Bank of America. Money. We're talking about the future of money here. Okay? No laws are getting changed until the banks get it all. Period. You can throw tomatoes at me if you're watching. I don't really give a face reality. Or get a bigger standing army.
Right.
maybe maybe this is a good transition to more sort of future focused parts of the world. This week, the UAE um, announced their virtual assets framework. What are your thoughts on that? Maybe pull out sort of what are the key points in that framework? What's new? What does it change? Anything new for the industry?
There's nothing new. There's nothing new. If you read it, it's actually very clear. It's declarative, right? There are like 8 rule books, right? The one that jumps out at me is the compliance and risk management rule book, right? In the first section, it's books and records, audit, regulatory reporting. How shocking! Isn't that shocking to you?
Section G,
Shocking.
audit, external audit and internal audit, and Section H, regulatory reporting. It does sound familiar, Jason.
Yep. Just like every single other of the 60 jurisdictions around the world that govern regulatory frameworks for things that flicker on a ticker.
So, what are the implications for Auditchain in this context?
I can tell you that I've had a lot of conversations with people in the UAE. It has been said that there are voices that were opposed to some of the audit requirements, and these were accounting firms that were opposed.
Of
And
course.
the UAE said that they declined those pleadings. So those requirements stuck, right?
Right.
The audit profession, as it is currently constituted, needs help. They have publicly admitted that this is way too risky for us, and that they need to develop the skill set. The challenge with developing the skill set is that usually that skill set resides in the hearts, minds, and hands of younger folks who are leaving the accounting profession, or they're accounting majors and they've decided not to go forward into the profession. Very few want to become auditors. They want to create the technology that automates all that stuff, or they want to create the technology that everybody else is involved in Web3 and blockchain and so on and so forth. So this is all good for us.
Yeah.
There are very few qualified service providers, professional services firms that are willing uh, to meet that requirement in the UAE and everywhere else for that matter.
And it sounds like what is new is a different level of clarity. I'm just quoting a few folks who have responded to this saying, we thank Vara for issuing separate rules for specific activities like issuance, advisory, exchange services, and custody services. It feels like some in the industry feel like this is a greater degree of clarity
It is.
specific to
Yeah.
It
crypto.
is. They've learned. Okay, so I want to backtrack on something I said. Yes, to me, the 33 Act and the 34 Act is extremely clear, but that's because I've lived under that regime my whole life. Um, the way they wrote the rules in these rule books out of the UAE, I believe that they may have learned to cut away some of the ambiguity that may be seen as, other long established securities law frameworks in jurisdictions that have had it for implemented for quite some time. It's very easy to read these manuals. I mean, there's
Yeah, it
really
doesn't
not
have the
much room.
1,000-page of legalese that
No, it's
the
not.
SEC acts do.
It's not. It's very easy to read.
Okay. So it sounds like, it spans advisory, broker dealer services, custodial services, exchange services, lending and borrowing, payments, and then virtual asset management and investment services. Do you think that other jurisdictions will follow in terms of the level of clarity? What can we expect here in the U.S.? Or
Nothing. Nothing. The answer to your question is nothing until The banks get it
Banks
all in
get
the
it
end.
all.
Okay.
They get it locked. So it is a delay tactic.
You can call it a delay, or you can call it at the behest of the emperor. B of A, I'm not going to name any more names, right? The legionnaires, who are the SEC, are fighting for Rome. And the way they fight for Rome is they kill as many of the competitive aspects to Rome as possible so that Rome does not fall. Rome are the banks, right? Who is their
Yeah.
emperor? Right now, Jamie Dimon is their emperor. Nobody likes that, but it is what it is, right? He's the emperor.
Right.
And the emperor has been very noisy lately.
Yeah.
And he has been since 2017.
So the emperor has his sights set on Paxos now. The
No,
legionnaires
the
have gone after.
legionnaires has theirs. Yes,
Right.
correct.
Yes,
That's
the
right.
legionnaires have been deployed,
Yep.
and
They've been building the Roman roads across Europe and,
So-
and Washington, D.C.
In the interest of time, I'll tell you this. Nobody's going to like what I'm going to say. Everyone will disagree. But if they hire an honest lawyer to teach them and read bedtime stories right out of Rule 2A7 of the SEC in the 40 Act, stablecoins are money market funds. That's what they are. They don't pay interest. They're used to preserve capital. It's a way station, right? Until you decide what else to do, right? 2A7, Rule 2A7. Look it up.
can you describe for those who haven't read up on this, what is the action against Paxos right now, and what's the implications of it?
So the Department of Financial Services issued an order to Paxos for them to cease, to stop minting BUSD, right?
Which means they're not taking any more investment in on it of people's money to
There's no
way
redemption
station.
and issuance, right? Whatever
Right.
number of BUSD that there is issued by Paxos will remain that way, right? Unless someone swaps it for something else. So there'll be really, if this doesn't go any farther, there'll be a fixed supply of BUSD,
Right.
right?
Okay.
Which
So
is
it's
going to
not
cause it to vary in price.
Well, it's a stable coin, remember, right?
So was Luna.
Now, the next thing would be for the bank that holds custody of the funds that back each one of those BUSDs to terminate their relationships at the behest of other banks and the legionnaires, at which time there would probably be some sort of procedure where they would ask they would have to ask the DFS, and the DFS would grant a request to suspend the order so that they can open for redemption all of those BUSDs outstanding, right? Until there are no more left, and the only thing that is left is the number of dollars in the escrow account held by the bank that used to back all the BUSDs.
Now, could a third party like, Binance Singapore come in and just say, all right, we are going to go to all these banks that hold those and just buy the paper from them and start a new BUSD Singapore and take its place?
Yeah, technically speaking, they would probably, in violation of laws, announce a request to tender your BUSD for a new one, right? And
Right.
the new one would be issued by another banking institution or a subsidiary of Binance itself under the guise of something else, and get it out of the current quarantine that it's in, right?
Because arguably all the money that backs BUSD is in a regulated fund of somehow,
in
a
a
bank
bank.
with a bank with a
in a
federal
bank.
charter, or a bank in Europe with a charter. So that end of it is regulated, but just where they're gathering it in a central pool under this virtual currency BUSD is not regulated. And why is that so much more a problem if the actual fiat is in a regulated account?
One is the fiat in a regulated account. The other is the thing that wraps the fiat, the stable coin itself. The stable coin itself, just because it's made out of cryptography, does not mean it should not be regulated under 2A7, which is a money market regulation, right?
So if you're a retail investor, just sort of figuring out, like,
people are going to hate me, man. They think I already sound like I am Gary Gensler to them.
which
and today, the Biden administration announced a new person to head the SEC, Jason Meyers.
But listen, I've been living under that regime for too long. There's no negotiating with them. They don't move for anybody, except the emperor.
Right.
So which of the stable coins can be relied upon?
When you say relied upon,
I mean, if you're just a retail investor, there's questions about you Tether, there's questions about this BUSD. Like, which ones do you think the emperor will bless in terms of a stable coin?
Probably USDC.
Because?
One, they're far more regulated than the others. I'm not going to go into the levels of regulation.
Yeah.
They collaborate with regulated entities, and they're probably more transparent than any other stable coin, right?
Is it one of the major members of Circle, Coinbase?
It's Circle, yeah. And Circle has an arrangement with Coinbase. So you can instantaneously redeem your USDC for US dollars instantaneously.
And Coinbase is a public company that actually is one of the few that has a real auditor that produces audited results.
That's
so
correct.
There is a level of trust from the government there and people.
And is it because they can demonstrate that they actually have the reserves?
USD Circle, you mean?
Like 1-to-1, yeah.
Yes, they can. They haven't. I believe. I'm not going to say who. I think I know who it is. I forgot. It's. But they have an auditor that does a proof of proof of reserves is appropriate in this case, right? Because you're doing nothing else other than taking in dollars and issuing the precise number, minting the precise number of USDC tokens, right? On whichever chain, right? And then when somebody wants the dollars back, right, they tender the USDC, right? And it gets burned, right?
Yeah.
There's no other operations other than that, right? That's probably more appropriate for an attestation similar to the ones that were being given, which were none at all. And I don't want to go into that because it's a whole different topic. But so, yeah, the USDC is the most transparent. Now, if you're a decentralist, right, then DAI is where you're going to go, because DAI is an algorithmic stable coin, which is tendered in a contract in exchange for the ETH that you loaned, right? You loan ETH, you get DAI, right? On centralized exchanges, the incentive is to close the spread and peg it, because if it's more than $1, you'll sell it. If it's less than $1, you'll buy it.
Any updates you want to give on Auditchain?
Yes, but I can't.
Stay tuned, people.
And thus we have the content for a future episode, one of many in the future.
Stay tuned.
Well, today we covered the SEC versus Kraken in the staking quagmire that everyone is in now. We've covered the SEC versus Paxos and the BUSD topic, and of course the new forward-thinking rules in the UAE, which brings them up to the level of reporting, and the rest of the, Jason, is it 60 major reporting areas of the world? I believe that's what you said?
Well,
or 60 reporting.
There are 60 jurisdictions that mandate the use of the same global standard syntax we use in order to communicate business, financial, and tax information. Yes. And usually these jurisdictions are the most advanced when it comes to securities law framework.
The kind of the one question that I've had a couple of times offline here about the SEC regulating the everything as an investment contract is the idea that if an institution on the blockchain allows a flash loan to happen, because people are saying, hey, the SEC is regulating every type of loan as an investment contract that you expect to return. And now even things like, could a flash loan be an SEC enforcement issue for blockchains that allow that to happen?
Well, forget about cryptography, a blockchain. A loan, by the way, a unique loan made between two parties is not a security. It's a loan, right?
Right.
So if anybody's listening, just remember, a loan between two parties, is not a security. It must be called a loan agreement, right?
And if if the company is in the business of giving loans and then they end up financing all that type of stuff, it's just,
well, then they start to head toward providing the services of a bank, right?
And thus the quagmire continues. And we've talked a lot about that in the past, but it's a good thing because Auditchain has a project to unquagmire things and to bring transparency to all of these companies, all of these regulatory bodies, and all of these issues we bring up.
I just want to say a thing. 80 to 85% of securities law compliance for issuers is financial reporting. Period. Right?
Provide the info.
And we make it real easy. I mean, it's so easy, even an accountant can do it. Just kidding. No, but it's so easy that anybody can do it. It's an expert network for people who are not experts. Right? The system is the expert.
Thus your line, this is a human problem with a technology solution.
That's correct.
All right, everybody. There you go. On the brink. Yoli, any last words?
No, on that note, that seems like a good way to end. Stay tuned for more news from Auditchain. We look forward to that. And there's certainly no shortage of excitement in the crypto space. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, everybody. See you later, and we'll see everyone else next week on the Brink.